y'all, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing the second video in my brand new series, and today it is all about Ryukins. Ryukins are known for their short, deep body and their characteristic hump. The hump looks something like this. If you are looking at Ryukins at your local fish store, you may or may not see the characteristic hump. Ryukin hump is similar to an Aranda's wen in that it grows with the fish. It is not always obvious when the fish is a baby that it's going to have a hump or not. Later, when I show you my Ryukins, I will include their growth pictures so that you can see how little of a hump they had when I got them and how big it is now and how it's grown in those several months of lapse. Ryukins can get pretty big, however they generally grow this way and not this way. They usually get between 6 and 8 inches long. I have seen some huge Ryukins in my time, but again they grow top to bottom, not left to right always. I have found that they tend to do better in temperatures between 65 and 78 degrees. I have found that they are generally very hardy with cold water. Arandas, as I spoke before, have a little bit harder time with cooler water, but Ryukins generally do very well. In my experience, Ryukins are generally very hardy, and I have actually never had a Ryukin get sick on me, like from bacterial illnesses or infections, fungus. I've never had one get ill on me that way. The only thing that I have encountered with Ryukins is swim bladder disease or swim bladder disorder, depends on what you want to call it. It's also called SBD. SBD is an issue with the swim bladder itself. The swim bladder is essentially what keeps the fish upright in water. So when they're swimming around the tank, they can keep themselves afloat and change direction. If there is an issue with the swim bladder, you will see the fish turn upside down or belly up, which means that they have most people think that means the fish is dead, and that's not always the case. If they're breathing, then you should really think about swim bladder disease. It's very, very common in Ryukins. I've had 3 Ryukins have swim bladder disorder, and I've had 1 Aranda have swim bladder disorder. But that's it. And it's pretty common with Ryukins due to their body shape, and I'm sure it's some kind of genetic thing. I don't get into that a lot. I'm a fish keeping hobbyist. I'm not a scientist or a researcher, but that's just my opinion on that topic. Out of my Ryukins, I have had to put 1 down in the past for swim bladder disorder. It was a male Ryukin that I actually got at the same time as Josephine. She's behind me there, right there. He was her brother, and he had some major swim bladder issues. I didn't see them in the pet store. It was actually about a couple days after I brought him home where I started to notice that he had a hard time keeping himself upright, and a lot of times I would find him belly up or swimming on his side. He just had a really hard time, and I ended up having to euthanize him. It got so bad that he couldn't even eat. Like, it was rough. But it doesn't always get to that. I know people are mortified of swim bladder, and it's not always a death sentence. I have 2 fish currently with swim bladder. Both are my Ryukins, and Josephine is my eldest. She was actually the very first goldfish that I purchased after I got back into the fish keeping hobby. This is how she looks, and this is her growth pics. So Josephine Josephine is not a huge Ryukin by any means, but she's healthy, and other than having swim bladder, she does absolutely wonderful. Josephine has swim bladder, and I suspect that she has had it since she was born. I believe it was a defect of the swim bladder itself. However, she most of the time is upright. Very few times will I catch her belly up. Maybe 2 or 3 times a week she will be belly up, but it's pretty rare, and 99% of the time she is upright. However, as she gets older, it could get worse. I don't know. It hasn't since I've had her, so it's been about the same. But it doesn't affect her at all. She will stay belly up for a few minutes, and then she'll turn herself back over. But that's about it with her. My other Ryukin, her name is Lucy, and she is a short-tailed Ryukin, and this is her and her growth pics. Much younger than Josephine, but she has slightly more of an issue with a swim bladder. She used to be in the tank with Josephine, and if you can tell, that tank is a little bit tall, which isn't the best for fancy goldfish, but the ones I've had in there don't really have an issue with it. Josephine, if I was able to get her in a shorter tank, she may do better, but she doesn't do it enough to make me concerned about it. When Lucy was in there, she struggled quite a bit. Because she is short tail, she is what I call top heavy, and her tail is not big enough to support her body. But she has a little bit more trouble than Josephine for that reason, and that's why I don't keep her in that tank anymore. She just had a lot of trouble. She always stayed at the top. She never swam down low. The reason I don't recommend them being in tall aquariums is because it puts a lot of pressure on the swim bladder, and it can make the problem worse. And in her case it did, and she had a really hard time. I ended up moving her into one of my 40-gallon breeders, and she rarely has an issue. For the most part, she's upright. She will have an issue a couple times a week where she'll be belly up for a few minutes a day, and then she will fix herself and upright herself, but that's it. That really helped that issue. However, my 2 Ryukins don't have a severe swim bladder disorder. I have saw some that are very severe, and in that case the fish ends up getting euthanized, because it's really not a good way to live, and it's cruel, in my opinion, to make a fish live like that. But with my fish, I've been very lucky, and they don't have a severe case of swim bladder. So the size of tank is the same as any other fancy goldfish. You need 20 gallons per fish. As far as food goes, it's pretty much the same as you would feed your other fancy goldfish. They don't have any special need requirements. Make sure you have a really good gel food. I prefer gel food with Ryukins because they just tend to do better with it. I recommend Repashy Super Gold or Repashy Soylent Green. It's by far the best gel food on the market. If you can't afford it, you can also make your own recipes. There is a ton of them all over the internet. You can also find a lot of good ones on the Goldfish Community Forum. If you do feed them pellets, I prefer a high quality pellet such as New Life Spectrum or Jappy's Fish Food. That's the only kind of pellet that I feed any of my fish, not just Ryukins, but any of my fish. That's the only 2 pellets that they will get. Also, I recommend that you stay far away from Hikari. I think that's how you say it, but it may be something else, but I think that's how you say it. It's very popular among pet stores, and it's really just not a good food. You'd be surprised how many messages I get on a weekly basis from my Instagram followers that tell me that they have a floaty fish and they don't know why, and I ask them what they're feeding, and it's Hikari, and I tell them to switch to a gel food or switch to a better pellet, and they do, and the fish ends up recovering and there's no issue. So I really recommend staying away from that food. I have fed it in the past. I actually ran out of food and had to go out to my local store to pick up something to hold them over until I got new food. And that's what I got, and I decided that I was going to try it out to see if I got the same results, and I did. And I think it really has something to do with ingredients, and I just recommend staying far, far away from it. So that's pretty much all I have to say about Ryukins. They're a great fancy goldfish to keep. One, because they can tolerate a wide range of temperatures, and they really don't have a lot of issues other than the swim bladder. So that's all I have for today. Stay tuned next week for the continuation of this series. I'll be doing fantails, butterfly telescopes, ranchu, and black moors. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see y'all next time.